Nowadays, the mankind is watching, astonished, the extraordinary and unusual worldwide fact that moves daily as in a giant billiard table, enormous ciphers flying around as bits and bytes at the speed of the light, transferring from one point to another of the planet, fabulous fortunes in a true speculative orgy, completely dissociated from reality, without any correspondence with the real reach of our physical world, the so-called globalization. It seems to those not fully aware, and we shall include here sadly the great majority of the citizens, that this process is creating a world in which everyone will have access to a higher standard of life with greater social justice. That fact comes to us by the media as a cure-all for the biggest world problems. As a matter of fact, it is necessary to be pointed out that only 2 to 3% of all those transactions raise into $3 trillion a day, only 2 to 3% refer to commercial and industrial activities. On the other hand, the great majority of the financial transactions is purely speculative, as if money by itself would be able to generate more money, as a fantasy that is carrying the world economy to a dread end. Until the 70s, the Bretton Woods rules were followed. Money to flow between nations needed the previous government authorization. There was a fixed exchange rate between the currencies of the greatest industrialized nations. The Fed assured with the gold equivalent any transaction. In other words, there were restrictions to the flow of speculative money. In 1973, the US government imposed an unilateral rupture, and the barriers disappeared. Gold reserves are no longer necessary. Money is no more the wealth symbol. It is the wealth proper, a fiction in such a way that goes to the edge of insanity is supported by a group of worldwide institutions, the so-called international financial system. And here are included the IMF, the World Bank, the World Trade Organization, and so on. That is the money empire, the false money, the real speculation conducting the mankind to its ruin and destruction. Well, gentlemen, it is with that false money that mega speculators through the world are willing to buy the real riches of all developing countries. In Brazil, they are selling out by the dozen all of our strategic state companies. The right words are these: they are giving away all of our strategic resources, including Vale do Rio Doce Company, the greatest iron mining company in the world, by only $3 billion, equivalent to less than half of 1% of its estimated value. In Brazil, we have the greatest reserves in the world of niobium, titanium, first quality quartz. We are the greatest gold producers in Latin America. We have the richest subsoil in this planet, and we are seeing our riches going there cheap to the industrialized countries. President Clinton, during the Summit of the Americas in Santiago, recently said, "Your prosperity lifts ours. Our prosperity lifts yours." Is that really true? From the Brazilian states of Amapá and Minas Gerais, we carried millions of tons of manganese sold by insignificant prices. Now, in those Brazilian states, we have only big land craters, holes, and our manganese rests in Pennsylvania. It's now part of the US strategic inventory. In the future, we'll have to pay whatever price they want for that same mineral. Let me call your attention to another fact. We are not only the richest country in the world, for while in at least one state of the US it is necessary the desalinization of water for having fresh water, we have 21% of the freshwater resources on the planet. We are the 5th country in territorial extension. We receive solar energy all year long, all over the country. That huge and inconceivable amount of energy is partially stored on the bones of atoms and molecules of the carbohydrates and lipids in the plants, from where we extract alcohol and oils that can substitute petroleum, allowing Brazilian energy independence. We don't have glaciers, we don't have earthquakes, we don't have hurricanes and the like. Nevertheless, 2/3 of our population live in an unacceptable condition. Half of them living in absolute poverty, in absolute misery. Brazilian government pays to the international creditors and their Brazilian representatives about half of the gross national income. That's to say, $5 billion a month only as interest. The internal and external debts altogether represent today the astronomical cipher of $500 billion. Government maintains a fiction of currency stability, concealing the disorderly growth in public debt and promoting the destruction of all the industrial production chain of the country with mass importation of industrialized products and even food. Our party, Prona, rises against that process. It's imperative a new Bretton Woods, but as we don't have the condition to impose such an agreement on the international scenario, and as we do have in our country all that we need for our survival, there is only one option: not to drown. We'll break with the international financial system. We'll no longer accept these speculators' extortion. We'll sit down for negotiations, impose our sovereignty. We'll price our goods with justice. The interest rates that we'll pay shall be the lowest possible. That is the only way to proclaim our economic independence. Thank you very much.